So good afternoon to everyone. It is exactly 1600 hours South African time. And my name is Tudo Khabapeti. I am the WITS SRC president. And today I've been asked to come and moderate a very interesting conversation. This is one of the many conversations that the Dean of Student Affairs at the university has been having over the past few weeks. And today we have a very interesting guest that will come and join us and give us perspective. And effectively today we speak of leading authentic leadership lessons to build an inclusive university and society. And I think this is a very important conversation that we will be having today with the guests, because in the spaces that we find ourselves in, there's always talks of how universities must not be separate from society. Universities must be in society, because you cannot have a university and a society. Universities effectively must be amongst the society, and effectively I think there's an important conversation that must be had. And we have an interesting guest today who will take us through the conversation. And I don't want to waste a lot of time. This is planned to finish just at 1700 hours on the dot. So I don't want to waste a lot of time. I want more of the time that we will spend here this afternoon to be with the guests, to engage and get to engage with the guests on this particular engagement, but many other things as well that I know she will be very comfortable with having a conversation with the WITS community and effectively everyone else that could be joining us from across the world. So I will get right onto it without any waste of time. I'll ask the Dean of Student Affairs at the University of Witwatersrand, Jerome September, to come in and introduce this interesting guest that we have. And we'll give it right to her to kickstart the conversation. But before I give over to the Dean, I want to say, because we want to create a platform for engagement and we want it to be a conversation that is had between the guests and the participants who will be coming in. There's a Q&A tab that is available for whoever is participating and whoever is joining us from either the WITS community or across the world. You can post your questions there as the guest speaks to us and engages with us. You can post feel more than free to post your questions there, and we'll have the conversation rolling just after the presentation. Dean of Student Affairs, Mr. Jerome September, over to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Tuto. Good afternoon, WITS community. A special good afternoon to our Chancellor, and afternoon to those of you who have joined us and who are not necessarily members of the WITS community. You are most welcome. These conversations were set up to really contribute to your growth and development as WITS students. We know that WITSies, upon graduation, take up space in all sectors of society, and in taking up space, they particularly take up leadership roles in all sectors of society. And as we stand here in 2020, there are some major leadership issues that as a country that we are talking about. There are leadership questions in the world that we are thinking about and debating. And so this is really a platform for us to think about who it is that we are, to think about our leadership, to think about our contribution to society, and to think about our place in the world. And so it's this idea that, yes, as a WITSie, we aspire to be the very best. Each one of you aspire to be the best that you can be. But that best that you can be, it is my belief, must be also being the best for the world. So not only the best in the world, but also the best for the world. So what legacy do you leave? What impact do you make where you might find yourself? And so we are delighted and we are privileged to have some speakers, and like today's speaker, our Chancellor, who are making their mark, who are using their platforms, who are using their role in society to shape society for the better. So let me quickly introduce our Chancellor. As you know, our Chancellor is Dr. Judy Dlamini. Dr. Dlamini grew up in Westville in KZN. Her parents was a strong influence in her life, encouraging her to pursue education, and they served as role models of strength and resilience. She qualified as a medical doctor from the University of Natal and an occupational health practitioner from the University of the Free State before earning her MBA from WITS and a doctorate in business leadership from the University of South Africa. She also holds an innovation and entrepreneurship certificate from Stanford University, and her book, Equal But Different: Women Leaders' Life Stories, Overcoming Race, Gender, and Social Class, was based on her doctoral research. Dr. Dlamini practiced family medicine and is an occupational health consultant, and this was before changing careers to corporate finance, working at HSBC Investment Bank. She's founder and executive chair of Mbekani Group, which includes operations in health, in property facilities management, and retail, luxury fashion retail. She previously chaired the JSE-listed Aspen Pharmacare Limited, and she was also on the boards of Anglo American, Discovery Holdings, Woolworths Holdings, and the Wits Donald Gordon Hospital. She's also co-founder and trustee of Kiwe Trust, a public benefit organization that a family uses for social investment, and it focuses on health, rural development, and education. She has won numerous awards, is a co-founder of the Future Nation Schools, a company which aims to build a network of affordable private schools in South Africa and far afield. And of course, she is our Chancellor. She is a Witsie through and through. And so it's my pleasure to hand over to Dr. Judy Dlamini.
Thank you very much, Dean of Student Affairs, Jerome. Good afternoon to everyone, to the President, Tuto. Thanks for having me. All the attendees, it's an honor to be here. I was just saying earlier on that I actually believe in a conversation rather than a presentation. But just to frame my talk, I've prepared 10 slides. These 10 slides, I hope to go through them in 10 to 15 minutes. And it really is to, one, shape the conversation, but also just give you a snippet of how I view leadership and what I've learned over time. And while we have the conversations, it is my belief that I will learn something from you. So it's not a unidirectional type of learning. Let me just make it presentation. Can everyone see it? Okay, everyone is on mute. I'm going to assume that you can see it. So thanks very much, Tembi. There are so many leadership definitions. Those that have been to business school will know there are types of leadership and definitions. And each leader chooses a style that works for him or her. And you actually nurture and mold the style as you grow into leadership, as you learn, because you can always be better. It doesn't matter what age you are. And you also need to be adaptable. So the definition that I have today, it might change tomorrow based on the experiences that I encounter, but it's at the core of leadership is service. It's the will to serve with integrity and humility, the confidence and courage to take and own your decisions, in spite of having people giving input to what becomes your decision. At the end of the day, it's your decision. You have to stand by it. The commitment to embrace difference and create an inclusive culture for all. I can't emphasize this more based on where we are as a country, as the universe, just what we see in terms of people that don't embrace difference, that see difference as an anomaly or being inferior just because of where you were born and how you look. And then in summary, good leaders are authentic, they are inclusive and effective. And it's important to note that leadership starts with self-leadership, respect for yourself, and respect for others. And you always lead within a context, and the context might change. So I thought I'll bring in multiculturalism because as a university, we deal with so many different cultures, and these cultures are within even a race. So cultures are not specific to a race, but even within races, there are different cultures. And what do I mean by multiculturalism? It's a system of beliefs and behaviors that recognize and respect the presence of all diverse groups in an organization and society. It acknowledges and values their socio-cultural differences and encourages and enables their continued contribution within an inclusive cultural context. That actually empowers each and every one of us to feel that we belong. And when we feel that we belong, we bring our best game to the party. We actually can be innovative, we can contribute. Whereas if we are expected to assimilate to the dominant culture in an institution, we lose a part of who we are because we are trying to behave as we are expected to. And you can never be yourself if you can't own who you are. If you are a township girl like myself from Claremont, you must be able to own that identity, because that identity makes you comfortable with who you are. And someone else who brings a Western type of culture should actually feel at home at Wits the same way that I do. So it's very important that we embrace that. And it's not just the university leaders, but each one of us has an impact on the culture that we create in this university that we love. So there are always signature traits, if you like, that the learned amongst us, the scholars, will identify as those things that will actually make you succeed if you want to be inclusive. I could have chosen any other leadership traits. I chose this because I really believe that as society, as universities, being inclusive is key for us to be the best that we are meant to be. They talk about the 6 C's to make it easy. They start with courage. Courage as a leader is very important because you are faced with tough decisions and you need to have the courage to own those decisions and take those decisions. As a leader, you are supposed to call out what is not right and do something about it. That takes courage. You need to be curious to understand the different ideas, the different perspectives, and that enables you to grow. So you have to have an open mind at all times, because you can learn something from the person who cleans and makes your office look beautiful, or your room address, or the lecture theater. Those people are part of the team that makes us Witses. So we have to be curious to understand where they're coming from, and even listen to their ideas and listen to their challenges. Because if we are humble and curious to learn from each other, we become so much stronger as society. They talk about cognizance. This is awareness of your biases. There is no way that you would be raised in a society that is so prejudiced because of our history and not have your own biases and your own prejudices. It's not a crime to have those prejudices based on our history. But what is a crime is not doing something about it. You need to be aware of your prejudices and do something about it. Because if you don't, then we'll continue to have the cliques scenarios amongst many other scenarios that have prejudice against certain races. The cultural intelligence is very important. There are certain things that when you say to someone, they are okay because you get their culture. But if you don't understand the culture, get to understand that culture so that you don't say things and make people feel out of place or unhappy because it's so unnecessary. A start that is bad doesn't make for a good relationship going forward. Collaboration, I cannot stress that more. As society, as universities, we need to collaborate amongst ourselves, the different stakeholders. We need to collaborate amongst universities because it's one South Africa that we're trying to create. It's one world that we live in. COVID has reminded us how interconnected we are. So what we do here has an impact in other parts of the world. So collaboration, learning from each other is the key for a successful universe. And the last one is commitment. I said in my definition that commitment is key. Commitment to serve, commitment to do what's right at all times. There's a saying by Martin Luther King that it's always the right time to do what's right. That's very important. So sitting there as a Wits student amongst people that are attending, what does this mean for you in your life right now? It starts with each one of us. Be a good leader of self. Understand your strengths and weaknesses. None of us is perfect and you don't have to be. But the key is understanding your strengths and use them, and understand your weaknesses so that you get a team that covers your weaknesses. Or you just are very cognizant of the weaknesses so that you try and work on the strengths, because it's easier to build on strengths rather than weaknesses, and learn to deal with the weaknesses as you go with your life. I'm not sure if anyone can actually say the parents didn't mold who they have become. The first leaders you meet are your parents. They shape the context of your world and the person that you become. And it depends. Some things that your parents do are not good things, but you don't only learn from good things. There are certain things that my parents did that I said, I'm not going to do this when I raise my family. That's a lesson. And I will take this because I like it. So that's how we juggle from our context. And teachers are the next people that we meet, and they also mold who they become. They build our confidence or actually kill our confidence, depending on the type of teacher that you have. I find that I've led in different contexts. I've led in different sectors of the society. And I've found that there is no better way of leading and adapting to the different contexts that you find yourself in than just knowing yourself. Who are you? What legacy do you want to leave behind? You know, when you're gone, the only thing that people will remember is what you leave behind, how you made them feel, how you changed the world for better. I always say to young people, you don't only change the world when you are my age. Every day you make a difference in what you choose to do and what you choose not to do. Just being kind. I've interviewed many people for my different books. There's a young man that I interviewed from Uganda. He says, you know, I had an opportunity. I went and studied in Kenya. And I actually mixed with people from my country, people who think like me. I went to Britain, I did the same. I'm going to Stanford now, and I'm going to change that because you don't grow from only interacting with people from your country and people who think like you. You have to go beyond people like you and learn to deal with difference. It trains you for dealing with conflict, and be comfortable with dealing with conflict, because as a leader, that is what you will encounter. What is your value system? I found this to be very important in my journey, because in business, I discovered that when I deal with people who have a similar value system to mine, those partnerships seem to last, and those partnerships seem to be mutually beneficial. But when I ignore the value system of my business partner and just look at the numbers to say we're going to make money, those have failed. So it's very important to understand your value system and know what you will do and you will not do. What do you stand for? What's your purpose in life? Those things are important, because at the end of it all, you try to be your best at all times, do the best, empower yourself, and just be positive. There's something that was said by the Dean to say, what you are for the world, because we are here to be of service to the world that we find ourselves in. We neglect some of these areas, and when I was your age, I think the soul part I didn't get as much as I do now. So it's all good to take care of your body. You can see your president looks very sharp because he takes care of himself. Your mind, that's why you're there at Wits, but that's not the only thing that you do. Education from your classes. Educate yourself broadly. Read broadly outside what you have to read to pass exams, to be a responsible, well-connected citizen. But you know what? Don't forget your soul. The only thing you take with you when you leave this earth is your soul. And you realize that when you bury someone that's very close to you, that you know what? The body is remaining here, and it's only the soul that they take with them, and you can't protect them. It's all up to them. I think this is the last slide. What's the story of an authentic leader? She invests in her technical skills. I've put he there so that guys don't feel that I'm neglecting them, but I'll use she because we tend to use he all the time, and we need to change the status quo. Your soft skills are very important, because for a long time, it was just about your hard skills, what grades you received, and you passed cum laude. But you know what? People that do well in life, people that do well in leadership tend to have those soft skills of empathy, of understanding others, and they tend to do well because of that. The relationships that you nurture locally, globally, build those networks. And it doesn't have to be tomorrow or outside university. The people that you are in class, that's your network. How you treat them, how you engage with them will determine your future. When I did my MBA, I was already almost 40, and I wanted to change careers using my MBA, but it was quite difficult to leave the medical field and go into business. And for people that were going to employ me for reasons that are best known to them, they just put me in a box and thought I'm a doctor. Guess how I got my job at an investment bank? From someone that I had a relationship with through the MBA, through the syndicates. So please, that person sitting next to you at a lecture hall, that's your future network. So take care of that relationship. Working hard, there is no alternative or substitute to that. That's the only way if you are to succeed. If you are to ignore everything I've said in this slide, integrity, integrity, integrity. Because all you have is your name. It doesn't matter how many degrees you have. It doesn't matter how much money you have. If people can't trust you because you are not dependable, you don't have integrity, then there is a challenge. I think The rest we can discuss when we have the chat, but I like the confidence that mixed with humility, because when you humble, you are accessible. When you humble, anyone can come up to you and say, how about this? And those are the lessons that you get, especially if you're trying to understand the organization that you find yourself in. The people that you are going to learn from are not the guys that you sit around the board table with. You will learn something from them. But those guys that tend to be neglected because they are not at the same level, they are what is perceived to be a lower level, they understand the institution better than all of us. So the last thing I would like to say before I move on is that please never, ever sell your soul for anything or for anyone. Nothing is worth it. Happy Heritage Month. Let's get going. Let's have a chat. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chancellor Dr. Dlamini. I think that was well done. The conversation has been kickstarted at a very high note. I think more than anything for me, what I will take from this conversation more than all the other things is the insistence and the reiteration in one not losing self and one not running away from who they are. You know, when you enter into certain spaces, for instance, when you enter into a university space and you're given a leadership role, for instance, young people tend to lose themselves and they lose who they are. And I think for me, and I've had this conversation with a lot of colleagues to say, I think the issue of understanding oneself and one's self-worth is one of the most important things. And I think I'm happy that a person of the stature of the Chancellor of Wits University is coming to us this afternoon and is reiterating the importance of self more than other things, you know. The second issue which resonates so much with me, and those who've dealt with me personally would know this, is the issue of integrity, but humility in the same breath. You know, you mentioned how you could learn a lot from the person that cleans your room, for instance, the person that is by the gate of a Wits University, from campus control, for instance, and all of those people that are around you. I think that resonates with me so much, because it's part of not losing self. Because if you were brought up from, I mean, you mentioned how your parents become your first leaders. If you're brought up from people that believed in humility and believed that, I mean, I'm Tswana, for instance, and so they taught me, or you must not just pass an elder without saying dumelang. You know, so I think that is important, and those are some of the things that some of us, you know, take even beyond. I mean, as SRC president, we must still be found greeting and saying dumela ra dumela ma. You know, I think that those are some of the most important takeaway points for me, not only as moderator, but also personally. You know, because I think they resonate so much with me, but the leadership style that some of us believe in. I am told that the Q&A session is buzzing, and I want to go to that point to maybe start the conversation and maybe continue the conversation from the few comments that I've made, Dr. Dlamini, but I think it would also assist to have the comments and the conversations from the Q&A from the participants. There is a Nazim. Mr. Nazim is asking, promoting a culture of community engagement and volunteerism amongst young people. Consumerism has promoted a high sense of individualism, which is not necessarily negative, but must be balanced by investing in our communities. So I think it goes back to that thing of not losing oneself. So perhaps let's take it to you, Dr. Dlamini. How do you, because you mentioned that at the core, I'm sorry. So I'm saying you mentioned that at the core of leadership is service, and Mr. Nazim there mentions the issue of consumerism, but communism in that essence. There is a sense of individualism that sometimes comes to young people, with young people given leadership roles but want to serve their own self-interest, and I would argue lose themselves in the process of attempting to gain some sort of self-worth. So how Dr. Dlamini, do you think young people in the space can lead with the integrity that we speak of, but not be consumed by the space, as Mr. Nazim puts it? How do you think, I mean, you've went to being a medical doctor to business. How are you not consumed by losing yourself? How are you not consumed to other things that you necessarily did not believe in? From KZN, there are obviously certain things that you grew up with. How did you learn not to be consumed in spaces that were necessarily not yours?
It starts with knowing who you are and being true to self. Now, if you were taught to have integrity and you choose, because these are choices, Nazim and Twitter, it's choices you make. You choose that what matters to me, what is it that matters to me, right? I've always wanted to be financially independent. What does that mean? I wanted to make money, and lots of it. That was one of my goals. Why? Because I wanted to be independent. But how do you do that? By working damn hard to make sure that you learn, you earn, you give back. Those are my 3 mantras. You learn, you earn, you give back. And it doesn't stop at all times. What do you give back? What you know, some money in other instances, kindness. At all stages of our lives, those are the 3 things that I think are important. Always learn. You don't stop. Try to earn, right? I believe in a country that is so unequal, where we have such a high rate of poverty, each one of us has a responsibility to give back in whatever shape or form. When I was at medical school, we used to teach maths over the weekends to township kids that didn't understand it. We could give that back. We didn't have money, but we could give that back. So it goes back to who we are. Ubuntu is not just a saying. Ubuntu is like, I can't be happy when I have something that I can share and I don't share it. I know there's a lot of corruption, not just in this country, but the world over. If we can just remember that it's not sustainable, things that you get by cheating people, by robbing people, by taking from the people that you committed to serve, it's not sustainable. It will come back. And what do you have at the end? You might drive that beautiful car, but it's stolen because you didn't earn that money through the right means. I've worked hard for everything I have. It doesn't make me bad if I have money, because guess what? I got it through the right means. So people that have some money, not that I have much, don't look at them and think they are wrong, because you can actually take this culture thing to the extreme to think everyone that has worked hard, that has money that was well earned, is a bad person. No. The people that are bad are people who will break every principle to make money at the expense of others. So it's up to each and every one of us. You can't control what the next person does, but you can control what you do. staying true to yourself, staying true to your values, and committing to serve at all times.
Wow. Thank you very much, Dr. Dlamini, for that. There's Lesego Modisha here who asks that you mentioned being humble as a feature of authentic leadership. But she then asks, how then do you handle situations where you are clearly being undermined by your team, especially as a woman? Drawing from your own experience, Chancellor, how have you dealt with such situations without losing your humility?
It's very important to teach people how to treat you. That is the starting point. I always say, when respect leaves the table, you leave the table. So when you are disrespected, you don't shout. You call that person who's disrespecting you and tell them why it's not going to work. There is no place for disrespect from anyone and by anyone. If you allow it once, it will be very difficult to actually change all of a sudden. So just know from day one, you respect me, I respect you. So when someone blatantly disrespects you in a meeting, before you continue, you need to politely say, I find that to be disrespectful. It may not have been intended to be, but that is how I find it. For us to have a productive meeting, we need to respect each other. If you feel I'm not respecting you, please raise your hands and I will censor myself. Are you with me? So it's a conversation which is not aggressive. You don't raise your hands, you raise your voice, you don't throw your toys, because there's something that Michelle says, which says when they go low, we go high. So you don't go down there to gravel with people who don't respect themselves, because there are certain things that you don't do, because when you do them, that's disrespect to yourself. So it's important that you call those people to order. Sometimes you need to be tactful. Sometimes you'll find that the person that is making noise that is unacceptable has a crowd in the room, and you maneuver your way to get the meeting going. But at the end of the meeting, have a conversation with that person. People who are loud and arrogant, they are cowards more often than not. They are covering what they don't have. So they are very scared of confrontation. So don't let them get away with it. But how you deal with it is very important. And you will use your assessment in the context you find yourself in, whether you do it there and then respectfully, or you actually do it afterwards. Always respectfully, though.
I'm interested, though, Dr. Dlamini, from your experience, given all of your experience in the platforms that you've worked at and you've served in and you've led, personal experience, have you ever been disrespected and you've had to come in and say, no, but that's out of order?
Many times. And each context has been different. Like one of the things that I'm sure everyone who's attending now has been told about, and it happens especially to women, where you raise a point at a board meeting and it's ignored, and the guy raises exactly the same point and it's celebrated. The comeback to that is to then later on respectfully and gracefully to say, thanks for supporting my point, Tudo. I would like to add this. Are you with me? You are not being rude, you're just claiming back your point. So it's subtle things like that, because you want at all times people, especially for women, they want to bring the worst in you so that they'll say, you see, you want these people to lead and this is what they do. So they want you to lose your cool and do all sorts of things. Please don't. please don't lose your cool, whatever you choose to do, but be firm. Be
Mm.
firm and say your point. And sometimes people will disrespect you in very subtle ways. I find the best way of dealing with that is a conversation with the person that disrespects you. And it always helps to say, when you do this, this is how I receive it. As opposed to, listen here, you're not going to disrespect me, okay? You've lost the plot there. But when you say, this is what happened in that scenario, and I would appreciate it if you handle it this way, because the way you handled it, this is how what it shows me about you as a person, and I'm not sure that's what you would want. So every context is going to be different, but never allow anyone to disrespect you. If that's the only thing you take out of this, I don't care who they are, whether they are president of the country or vice chancellor of the university, just don't allow anyone to disrespect you. But how you do it is what matters.
No, that's beautiful. That's beautiful, Dr. Dlamini. You know, that last part, never allow anyone to disrespect you, takes me to this question that I saw on the chat box as well. And the Dean of Student Affairs would know this, because we've had a long conversation around the issue of how do you differentiate between robust engagement and disrespect. I saw it in the chat box, but it's also something that's coming to my mind now, because there's often that misplace. I don't know if I should call it a misplacing of where people misinterpret disrespect as robust engagement, and that often creates the unnecessary, you know, squabbles that could arise. How do you personally, how do you differentiate between robust engagement and disrespect? Because there's a very thin line in my view.
It depends. There's this saying that you play the man and not the ball. There is no thin line there. When you are attacking me as a person, that you are not going to stand for this arrogance and, right? That's an opening remark. What have you served? You see, as human beings, we need to be effective. It's not about saying those bombastic words. It's not about talking to the crowd. It's about achieving something. When you deal with human beings, what are you trying? You must know, when you enter a meeting, have it very clear in your mind. What do you want to achieve? To prove how much you know? To prove how much you can make the other person feel less? Because if you want that, that's okay. But are you going to be effective? The truth is you are not. If you deal with issues, if you are complaining that these are the challenges that we are facing as students, and we have ideas on how to resolve them, and we'd love to hear from you what you think of these ideas, which are this, that, and the other. You're not playing the man. You're talking challenges and the ideas that you have. And by the way, a leader worth his salt would actually love to engage with you on the ideas that you have. Because you know what? Until you've worn someone else's shoes, you don't know how it feels to walk in those shoes. Allow them to tell you how it feels to walk in those shoes, because then the solution will be custom made to the challenges of the people that you're trying to serve. So I don't think it's difficult to do. As long as each one of us, before you get into a meeting, ask yourself, what would make this meeting successful? What are the 3 things or 1 thing that I would like to achieve, right? If you want to make me feel small about myself, and that's your objective, good luck to you. But what will it achieve? Because when you lead, you don't lead for yourself. You have thousands of students that are hoping you will actually get whatever they are looking for them. You're not going to get it by antagonizing people. Distinction between being right and being effective.
What I can tell you right now, Dr. Dlamini, is that I was going through most of the chats, the comments there, and most people are motivated. I'm seeing a lot of Dr. Dlamini, your leadership. We love you. You are inspiring.
I love you back.
And all of those comments. There's a group of questions here from one person, and I'd like to read them out. One, this is one direct one. One, what is your favorite book and why? And then two, how do I as a leader find the fine line between being assertive and being approachable? I think it's almost similar to that one of disrespect but this one differs in that it's assertive and being approachable. That's two. But three, more often than not, balancing academics and leadership comes with an opportunity cost of either, if not both. So how does one position themselves such that one is able to excel in both instances? And this one I'll ask towards the end. But yeah,
Okay.
those three questions.
Great. My favorite book, The Anatomy of Peace. You know why I love it? Because it talks to the core of who I am. Why do you do what you do? Why are you not doing this and doing that? It makes me understand the core of the person that I am and my purpose. All these other things that teach you about tricks of leadership and what have you, I live that and I experience it. But that book is my favorite book of all times. Assertive and approachable. Assertive and arrogance is where you actually need to define it. If you are assertive, you stand for the truth. You stand for what you believe in. And people respect that if you do it respectfully. And they approach you because you are not eliminating anyone. You are just saying, we need to transform. And these are the things that we need to do in order to transform. And you don't bow from that. You are assertive, but you are approachable, because then people come and say, I have these ideas when it comes to transformation, right? They approach you because they know what you stand for. You have to stand for something with dignity and respect and never waver. People respect that. People want to know what they're dealing with. So when you say being authentic is important, of course it is. People always want to know what they are dealing with. Academics, leadership, I have a lot of students that I work with, and sometimes you find this young man or young woman who is being sucked into leadership and the grades start to fall. And I always have a conversation with them that sometimes leadership and academics work for some people. Why? Because they work damn hard to achieve on both aspects. But not everyone can achieve a leadership and also academia. So when your grades start to fade, focus. You can lead later on, but you need to get what it is that you came for at WITS. Are you with me? Postpone the other dream of leading, the other purpose of leading, because a better leader is a qualified leader who can show this is what I've achieved. Are you with me? So you can always work with who you are and how you are engaging with the different roles that you have. And wisdom is realizing that I'm starting to tank now. I'm starting to fail some causes because I'm pursuing the leadership. Tone down on leadership and focus on getting that degree, because we want leaders that are educated. We want leaders that are hard workers. And how are you going to show us that? By doing well with your grades. So make your choice.
No, thank you very much. I want to touch on that last response to then ask you, this is not, I mean, there's not one person that asked this, but a number of them, particularly when you speak of the issue of postponing, I would say a dream, postpone a dream. People have been asking how and what made you take the decision to move from effectively the doctor dream to the money MBA business dream. What motivated you to get to that? And you know what at what point did you realize, or nah, I'm actually taking this move, and the dream that was postponed of business has now arrived? What made you realize that?
I like that, because you are quite spot on when you say the dream of business that was postponed. I've always done business from the age of 11, selling at a tuck shop, my dad's tuck shop. And when I had the practice, I had a bakery next to the practice. So there was business. But, you know, they say hindsight is 20/20 vision, because when things happen at the time they happen, you think it's because of this or the other. It's only years later that you realize that maybe that was not the reason. But when I left medical practice, it was when I was affected by crime in the township. So I had to move out of the township and have a practice in town. And I loved serving in the township. It felt like service. It felt like I was giving a part of who I am. In town, it felt like my studies are wasted. I'm seeing people that have flu, that want certificates, and I wasn't happy. I wanted to be happy. I wanted to drive home and say, I've made a difference. I didn't feel that way. And I was like, okay, fine, I drop it. I find something else, which is business. So I moved more into business. But for me to be able to do that, I realized that the knowledge that I have and the skills were not adequate. I needed an MBA. I've always believed that you have to invest in yourself, you have to invest in skills to be able to do whatever it is that you want to do. Right now, I want to lecture. Why? Because I believe I've learned so much that I want to share. So I'm at a point in my life where I want to give more than earn, but I'll continue to learn. Are you with me? So the different phases in life, and I truly believed, Tuto, that as long as there is breath in you, you can serve so many different purposes, and you can explore so many other sectors of the economy, of society, and also just understand what it is that you can do. Because it's okay to stay in one area, that's fine. But know that area well and specialize in that area and go deep into that area. What I have a challenge with is just knowing what you know today and doing the same thing over and over again till you pass away at 80. You know what I'm saying? Because life has so much to offer. Explore it.
No, thank you very much. So we've had a lot of questions that I couldn't have taken all of them, but I'll take just one last question. You know, you mentioned, Dr. Dlamini, that right now you're looking at lecturing, because at the point in life that you're at, you are thinking of giving more than acquiring, because most of your life has been about acquiring, you know. So there's a Samia Chasi, I hope I'm pronouncing that properly, who asks, you know, some very wise and inspiring words for people of all ages, which are much appreciated, Doctor. You have previously described yourself as a dreamer, the little girl who dreamed of becoming a doctor and did just that, right? So I know you mentioned lecturing, but she asks, what are you dreaming of at this point? What is it that you think that, you know, specifically, this is what I must do, apart from lecturing? Of course, there's lecturing one. What 2, 3, or 4 things do you think for the remainder of a life well lived? What is it that you can still contribute? And I think that will round up the conversation.
Yeah, it's Samir. It's actually interesting because you have a dream, you attain the dream, and it gives birth to yet another dream. The thing that I think is my purpose right now, it might change as I do things, but I almost feel I have to remind an African child across all races that you are worth it, you can, and you will, through stories, right? To write for all ages, to just remind you. Can you imagine how difficult it is to raise a child in an environment where you open the TV and you have a policeman kneeling on the neck of a black man and killing him like a dog? And you, as a parent, have to say to this black child, you are worth it. Your life is valid. People don't understand how difficult that is. So for those of us that get it, we have a responsibility of sharing the stories of the many Africans in the whole world that have achieved, and say to the African child across the race that you can and you will. And just finding anything that you can do to make this world a better place because you lived and cared enough to do something. Doing something to show the different demographics of the country at leadership level, because we want to see people who look like us to make success accessible. So you want to see a leader that looks like you, that talks like you, because it says to you, I can and I will. So for now, that's what I'm focusing on. Ask me in 5 years' time, I don't know. It changes.
No, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Dlamini. I mean, we could have this conversation, I mean, until whenever, you know, because I can see right now there's more than 40 questions that are lined up. But I think the conversation has been had. We've gotten a gist of the kind of leadership that is needed to build an inclusive university, and just generally outside of the university space. So I think the time that I was given to moderate this conversation is coming to an end. It has been so much of a pleasure engaging with you, Dr. Dlamini. It has been so much of a pleasure to be moderating this conversation, and I've learned a lot personally and as a moderator. And I'd like to close it at that. I'm going to give the Dean of Student Affairs to formally close the session for us, because we want to close it at exactly 5 o'clock. So I hope he can come in, thank everyone for us, and then we can effectively say it's closed. Thank you very much, Dr. Dlamini. Thank you to everyone that participated and attended. Dean of Student Affairs, Jerome, I know I've taken a lot of your time. Thanks.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Thanks very much, Tutor.
Thank you very much, Chancellor.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I promise everyone, I'm not sitting in a dark room somewhere. There appears to be something wrong with the camera on my laptop. I literally have a light right here in my face so that you can see me. But be that as it may, what a beautiful hour. What an inspirational hour. What a challenging hour. An hour that I think is really making us think deeply about not just our leadership styles, but our purpose, how we live our lives, what we value in our lives, and how that radiates in everything we do and everything we touch. I agree with the people who are already saying, can we have Dr. Dlamini back? Can we have her back? This is a leadership conversation. It's a series that we're doing. And so we hope that in the new year that Dr. Dlamini will join us again. My role is twofold. Number one, to thank you, and number two, to tell everyone in the room who our next speaker will be. Firstly, Tuto, thank you so much. I could feel the connection between you and Dr. Dlamini, the way, and also the way you were picking up on the questions. It was really wonderful how you pulled through the various threads of what people were asking. And so we're really grateful, Mr. President, that you set the time aside to be with us today, to moderate the conversation, to pull out the rich learnings from it. And as people are saying in the chat, particularly, that everyone has learned a lot. Dr. Dlamini, I know it's your time to go. Thank you so much for having shared with us so generously. Learn, earn, give back. The issue around integrity. All you have is your name. Stay true to yourself. African child, you are worth it. So much that we can take from this conversation. And I really want to thank you for having set the time aside to share with our students, to share with us so generously. This session is being recorded, and so it will go onto a leadership platform that we are working on so that people can access it at their own time as they see fit, and further information around that will come. But thank you so much, Dr. Dlamini. When we have an opportunity, we will give you, both you and Tuto, the small little gift just to say thank you, but that's when contact is allowed once again. Colleagues, as we close, our next speaker will be next week. It's Ms. Linda Mafu. She is currently the head of political and civil society advocacy at the Global Fund in Geneva, Switzerland. Her talk will be my leadership journey from Gugulethu, South Africa to Geneva, Switzerland. And that will be next week. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for everything. Have a good afternoon and goodbye. Thank you again, Chancellor.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Dean.
Thank
Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.
Bye.